Hello, hello. Welcome. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We're really glad that you can be here with us on this Tuesday afternoon. I hope wherever you are cozy, you are warm. Maybe you've got a nice little beverage with you in the meantime as we learn together today. My name is Gloria Lausch. I'm the virtual program coordinator, and I'm going to take us through a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the chunk of what we're here for today. So, obviously, Nutrition Showcase. We're very glad that you're here. Today's topic is busting plant-based nutrition and diet myths. Let's learn about the housekeeping though. So there are two main buttons that I need you to know about. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom bar, the first one is the Q&A. At any point throughout this presentation, if you have any questions that you want to direct to our wonderful Chef Amy Symington, please pop them in that Q&A neatly in one place. We don't lose them in the chat box. They're right there. We will have time throughout the presentation to answer any questions that you may have. If we don't get to it right away in the second you type it, fret not. There will be dedicated time also at the end to get to any questions that you have. Your questions will be answered. Second button that I need you to know about is a little bit think to the left now with the new update, and it's two cute little chat bubbles. Again, says chat box on it. If you need any tech support, resources, anything like that that I can help you out with, you can pop them in the chat box there. If you don't see either of those two buttons, you may need to press the three dots that say more, and then the panel that pops up. You'll find Q&A or the chat box that way. Or if you're on a tablet or a phone or your watch, I don't know, you gotta swipe. I don't know how they work. They're all different. Swipe one way or another, and then it'll pop up over there. This is a webinar, so we cannot see you, we cannot hear you. So it really is important to us that you use either the chat box or the Q&A so that we can interact with each other throughout this hour. This presentation is being recorded, so anything that you see, hear, or smell off of the screen today will be sent to you in a YouTube link where you can rewatch and recook at your own leisure. Finally, for anything before, during, after, you can reach us at program@gildasclubtoronto.org. Just a little bit of notice, this is not healthcare advice. This is not health information. Well, it is health information, but if you're choosing to make any dietary changes or anything like that, please talk to your medical professionals, to your medical team. This is a whole blurb that tells you all about that. I'm not going to read it all, but it's on the screen for you to read through afterwards. But pretty much just saying, talk to your doctors. We are professionals here. Chef Amy is a very educated, very experienced professional, but she is not your doctor. So that's what's important here. Now, who is Amy Symington? So, Amy Symington is a nutrition professor, researcher, and nutrition-focused chef at George Brown College in Toronto, Canada. She is currently completing her PhD in nutritional sciences at the University of Toronto. She runs the culinary nutrition programming at Gilda's Toronto, including the nutrition showcases, webinars, and the supper club when we were back in person. Amy also works with the UHN, providing culinary nutrition demonstrations for patients. She volunteers with the Toronto Veg Food Bank as a chef and nutrition consultant and does recipe development and food writing for various publications in Toronto. Amy believes in the evidence-based health and environmental benefits of whole plant-based diets and is the author of the Long Table Cookbook, the Community Guide to Cancer Nutrition, and the Cancer Nutrition Companion Cookbook, the latter two which can be accessed for free on our website under resources. I'll also link them in the chat. So without further ado, Amy, all yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gloria, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, 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 everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to spend an hour with me this afternoon. As Gloria mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about plant-based diet and nutrition myths that are out there. For those of you who know me or maybe have tuned into my nutrition showcases for many, many years, you know that I generally focus on plant-based diets or plant-forward diets, and that's because that's where the research resides in terms of chronic disease prevention and management. Specifically, we're talking about cancer nutrition. And so if you look at any of the world recommendations or world guidelines for cancer nutrition, the focus is always on plants. And so with plant-based diets or plant-forward diets, there are some questions, concerns, some misinformation and lots of myths out there that I'm hoping to bust for you today. And so with that said, I actually have prepared a little PowerPoint presentation for you. I think this might be the first or second time I've done this. Anyways, usually you get like a nice little handout. This time you're getting a whole presentation, and then afterwards I'll share my slides with you, as well as the recipes for what I'll be making. So again, um, welcome to those of you who come before, and welcome to those newcomers as well. For those of you who have not done a nutrition showcase with me before, in terms of the kind of order of events, I generally do like the fact component first. So I talk about the cancer nutrition information that's out there, the most recent evidence, and then I practically apply it in kind of recipe form for you to try at home. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna share my screen here and we'll get started.
Perfect.
Awesome, you can see everything. Amazing. Okay, so there's the intro slide. As I mentioned, we're going to bust some plant-based myths today. But first, before I do that, oh, Gloria's already done all of those things, introduced me and talked about my background. I also do have I will mention too, I also have a master's in applied human nutrition with a focus on functional foods, which plant-based foods are functional foods. They contain obviously the vitamins and minerals and macronutrients that our body requires, but also they provide health benefits. That's kind of the definition of functional foods. So another reason why I'm super interested and focused on plant-based nutrition and research. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, but this is Canada's food guide. So as part of Canada's eating strategy, Canada's new food guide that was introduced in 2019 is based on the best evidence to date and related to what healthy dietary patterns look like, and healthy dietary patterns that help to prevent chronic disease and help with chronic disease management as well. And this is one of our first food guides that was not influenced by industries and lobbyists like previous guides were. And so you can see the composition here. So we're making half the plate fruits and veg, a quarter of the plate whole grains, and then a quarter of the plate protein, most of which should come from plants. And again, this is according to Canada's food guide. Okay, aside from Canada's food guide, here are some other evidence-based, health-focused diets recommended worldwide for chronic disease prevention and management. We've got the DASH diet here. We've got the Mediterranean diet here. We have the portfolio diet here. And we have, you know, the blue zone diets. And they all primarily focus on plant-based or plant-forward foods and are highly recommended for chronic disease prevention and management. And again, this is based on the best evidence that we currently have for dietary patterns for chronic disease prevention and management. And so, as I mentioned before, we're focusing on plant-based foods because they can contain the most amount of fiber, antioxidants, phytochemicals, which have been shown to lower the incidence of cancer. And so when choosing ingredients, it's important to select from a wide variety of whole plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and plant-based proteins, as these tend to have their own unique set of health benefits or phytochemicals. And you can see a little kind of quote here from the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research report, just again, focusing on or emphasizing non-starchy vegetables and fruits, pulses or legumes, and unprocessed grains because they contain, again, ample amounts of dietary fiber and micronutrients.
Just a little word definition, please, before we keep rolling. Someone
Yeah.
asked, is plant forward? Is it different than plant-based?
Wow, love that question. And yes, so I like to use both terms. So plant-based, generally speaking, and particularly when I use it, plant-based means you're solely just focusing on plants. So you're focusing on, you know, the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, and good quality plant-based protein. When I say plant forward, I mean your diet is predominantly plants, but maybe there are some aspects of animal-based products in there as well. And I always like to meet people where they're at. I mean, I grew up on a beef and dairy farm. I was a farm girl, so I know, people love their meat and potatoes. And so, yeah, as much as you can include more plants, the better. But I do like to use both terms just to be inclusive. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for chiming in with the questions, Gloria, because I can't see them currently. Okay, and so Gloria mentioned a few of our practical culinary tools for chronic disease prevention and management that I have created with the help of many, many, many experts, um, registered dietitians, doctors, research experts. And so, again, Gloria mentioned two of them are free and online, which we will share with you. And those are the ones that are the two that are furthest to the right here in this picture. The Community Guide to Cancer Nutrition, which just talks about the foods to consume for cancer prevention during treatment to help prevent recurrence. And then the Cancer Nutrition Companion Cookbook, which practically applies the Cancer Nutrition Guide with fun recipes. The Cancer Nutrition Companion Cookbook also goes into great detail about side effects and symptoms of cancer and cancer treatment and provides you with some hot tips and tricks on how to manage those things. So those are free. I think I've got a little QR code there you can scan as well, and those will pop up on your phone. And then the far left one is the Long Table Cookbook that I created for Gilda's Club. And all of my author proceeds go to support the social, emotional, and nutritional programming at Gilda's Club when you purchase it. So I make no money off of that cookbook. So I feel not one iota bad about promoting it because all the author proceeds go to Gilda's. But yeah, the Long Table Cookbook talks about dietary patterns and is focused on plant forward and plant-based. Okay, so here is the kind of meat and potatoes. So amazing. Think
You're back.
back. Oh, goodness. Let me just share my screen again. Not sure what happened there, but that's okay.
The last words we caught were getting into the meat and potatoes.
Okay, good. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's go back to. Ooh, 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 ooh. There we go. Amazing. And awesome. Okay. So, okay. So we're getting to the meat and potatoes. These are the plant-based myths that I want to bust today. So number one, those on a plant-based diet are or will become nutrient deficient, particularly in protein, iron, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids. Number two, plant-based nutrition and eating is complicated. And number three, plant-based diets are bland, boring, and expensive. Okay, so number one, in terms of nutrient deficiency, according to the American Dietetics Association and the Dietitians of Canada, appropriately planned vegan and vegetarian diets are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases, and that includes certain types of cancer in particular. Okay, and so I have a little resource there. Again, I'm going to share these slides afterwards. You'll be able to click on that link there, but essentially the resource provides you with all sorts of different sources of these foods that are sometimes people claim to be nutrients of concern. If you're eating a wide variety of different plant-based foods and you're focusing again on the fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, and good quality plant-based protein, and you're getting enough calories You don't need to worry about nutrients. Um, the only one that we do need to worry about, but this is for everyone, particularly because we live in Canada, and that is vitamin D. And we should be taking a vitamin D supplement regardless of your dietary pattern. B12 is something that also could potentially be something, but if you're drinking milk alternatives like soy milk, they're often fortified with B12, as are things like meat analogs or meat replacements. If you ever use nutritional yeast, it is very, very high in B12. So it has like 300% of your recommended dietary allowance for like a couple tablespoons. So it's very easy to get all these nutrients. And then just here's a look, like a quick snapshot of the food sources that you could potentially be consuming for these various nutrients. So lots and lots and lots of different options there. I usually for iron, I always say the greens and the beans coupled with a vitamin C. Calcium, we're looking at leafy greens. We're looking at calcium set tofu, you know, broccoli, bok choy, that sort of stuff. Protein, so many different types of protein. That's usually the first question of people on a plant-based diet, like, oh, where do you get your protein? That is one of the biggest myths. It's so easy to get your protein on a plant-based diet. It's just a matter, all foods contain protein. It's just a matter of the amount and quality that they contain. And by quality, I mean what amino acids do they have? And even then, that's not a big concern if you're eating a wide variety of different plant-based proteins. You're gonna get all the amino acids. Okay, number two, plant-based nutrition and eating is complicated. And I kind of already mentioned this, but eating a wide variety of whole plant-based foods is easy, and recipes and plant-based substitutes are absolutely endless. Very simply put, if we're focusing on Canada's food guide and some of the cancer nutrition guidelines out there that are also, they also correspond with Canada's food guide, which is great that these resources overlap. It makes it much easier for people to understand. And then we're focusing on whole plant-based foods or plant-forward diets as much as you possibly can. And then obviously seasonality is something that we obviously want to take into consideration. And one that's not on here is what food is accessible to you in terms of where you live and your financial situation, of course. And so if we delve even further into the research and we're talking about plants is a general term, here are some of the foods to focus on for, I would say, chronic disease prevention and management, but specifically cancer nutrition. These are the types of plants that have been shown or have the most research behind them in terms of helping with again, chronic disease prevention and management. So allium vegetables would be things like onions and garlic, citrus fruit, cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, arugula, kale, cauliflower, all those guys. And then, of course, you can see all the other ones too listed there. So there's lots and lots and lots of options. You're definitely not restricted. And you can see all the pictures there of some yummy recipes. Some of these are from my book, which is right there. So the Long Table Cookbook. So yeah, in terms of resources, this is just one example. The other two free resources that are found online on Gilda's website are also really amazing resources and tools to use. And the main thing for me as a chef, these things have to taste good. Otherwise, it's not going to make a lick of difference in people's overall health. They're not going to actually eat them, right? And obviously, we know taste disturbances can be a thing during cancer treatment. We have other cancer nutrition showcases that I go into detail about that. But the last resource I mentioned talks about that, the side effects and symptoms of cancer nutrition and its treatment goes into some details about how you can manage those taste disturbances. And there she is, the nice little link. This guide was based on these nutrition showcases. We took all that information and research and put it into one neat and tidy little package that's beautiful. There's awesome photos. There's awesome, easy recipes. So check those out. And the substitutions are absolutely endless when it comes to plant-based diets. Really easy to make simple swaps. Here are some examples for egg substitutes. Here's some examples for meat and dairy substitutes. And the good news is by making very basic, simple swaps, you're adding more fiber, antioxidants, and phytonutrients to your diet. Here's a little video just of the dairy-free queso that you can see here. And I'll play it. Yay! There you have it. Uh, doesn't that look delicious? And it's got all sorts of, again, plant-based ingredients, making it higher in fiber. I will say this is not to say that you should never eat cheese ever again. This is just an option. And we find actually with our nutrition showcases that when we did, especially in person, that it was more inclusive too, because I'm sure everyone has that vegan or vegetarian friend that this recipe would be really great for. So that's one option for dairy, a dairy replacement. I'm going to show you another one too for like a creamy kind of bechamel sauce. Okay, so we'll move to the third myth, which is plant-based diets are bland, boring, and expensive. And if you know me, you know that this is not true. I have all sorts of wonderful options for you that even like my brother, who's the biggest carnivore, absolutely loves my food and often says that if I just cooked for him all the time, he would be easily be a vegan. And he's like 220 pounds, 6'2", like really big. Used to play hockey. He would love to eat my food regularly. Okay, so fact, eating plant-based is as exciting, nutritious, and delicious as you make it, and you can save money. So of course, there are all sorts of ultra-processed foods out there that you could potentially be utilizing, but you don't have to, right? And they tend to be expensive. Okay, so here's some just examples of some plant-based proteins that are from whole foods that I highly recommended that I use regularly. And then on the left is a picture kind of practically applying what I've been talking about here. So soy, so tofu, edamame, tempeh, miso are all great sources. Complete proteins, meaning they contain all 9 essential amino acids that our body requires. You can see actually the top left there, the Greek salad is using a tofu feta. Nuts and seeds, so including things like walnuts, cashews, almonds, hemp seeds, chia seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. Legumes, so chickpeas, lentils, black beans, zucchini beans, kidney beans, lima beans. The amount of beans and legumes are absolutely endless. In the moussaka here on the left-hand side, I'm using lentils. The top is actually made of cashews. You could use potatoes though. Legumes, as I mentioned, yeah, whole grains are another one and often underappreciated in terms of their protein content. So quinoa, buckwheat, these are complete proteins. And then you have other ones like kamut and millet that are really good sources of protein as well as teff. And then seitan, if you've never had seitan before, essentially it's just like we use vital wheat gluten, which is just like a gluten flour that's a very, very, very high in protein. And you essentially make a dough and then you can make it taste however you want. I have a really good seitan bourguignon recipe that you're literally using it in lieu of beef. And again, it's high in protein, high in fiber, and you get that kind of yummy, meaty texture. Okay. And then some just examples, more examples of soy. So how it can look beautiful, bright, beautiful, super flavorful. I've got my creamy corn chowder with tempeh chorizo on the left there. On the right, you can see my miso edamame pot pies. I've got my winter rolls that have edamame in them. There's all sorts of ways you can use soy. And same with plant-based, or sorry, plant-based meatballs I've got here. You can see on the bottom right there, they're made of walnuts and lentils as well as mushrooms. On the left, you can see a picture of my tahini and sweet potato soup. That's in my book as well. And then on the top right is a vanilla chai chia seed pudding. Again, chia seeds, complete protein, really high in omega-3 fatty acids, and just super tasty. Some other examples for practical application of using legumes. So we've got a chickpea salad sandwich there. We've got some falafel burgers. We've got a black bean kind of chocolate tort. You saw the moussaka recipe from before. And then whole grains and seitans. You can use, again, as I mentioned, quinoa is a really great source of protein, complete protein. You can make all sorts of bowls. I've got a red kidney bean and fennel sausage there that uses red kidney beans as well as seitan. Again, these are all in my book and are just examples. There's so many recipes out there, just so many. I have so many friends and colleagues that that also do as well. Never heard of Sam Turnbull, really good friend of mine. She just came out with an award-winning. She just won a huge award for her recent cookbook called Craving Vegan. It's like 101 Craving Vegan, and it's all these like amazing plant-based recipes that are super easy. Cost savings. So finally, we have cost savings. This is probably self-evident to you, but if you're swapping out, those expensive cuts of meat with things like legumes, it's going to save you money. Also with food inflation, it's on everybody's mind. So it's really great to have these ways to replace the more expensive ingredients. And then we're also eating more in line with Canada's food guide at the same time. And this is just one of the resources. I also work for an international company called HSI Canada. I'm part of their forward food team, and I train chefs all across Canada just how to get more fruits and vegetables on large institutions' menus like hospitals and universities. And so cost is always a big thing. And here are just some examples on simple swaps that also save money. And I'm going to show you a ground beef replacement today using lentils. And then, yeah, some other examples, using tofu. I have a tofu feta recipe in my book. Using things like eggplant or tofu with all sorts of spices like smoked paprika, soy sauce, maple syrup to give that like smoky, sweet, and salty taste that bacon provides. I've got a smoked carrot recipe that's really great that also is much, much cheaper than smoked salmon. Obviously, with those sort of things, that's not a direct protein replacement. I would never suggest that, but it is a cost saver. And then tofu and chicken breast. Okay, so I think I've busted sufficiently all three of these myths for you. And I will leave it at that. If you have any questions for me now, great. If not, I can turn it over to my kitchen cam and get started on our recipe for today. So we're going to do the practical application of everything we just learned now. Any questions? I can't see if
Uh, Questions yet, but we have praise. Jackie says, "Hi,
Aw,
recommend the Long Table Cookbook. Bought it a couple years ago and love it."
yay. Aw, thank you so much. That's so kind. I really love to hear that. Amazing. And you're supporting Gilda's book, which is also great. Okay, cool. So I'm turning it to my kitchen cam now. Thank you, Gloria, for your tech help. So I'm going to make for you two recipes that I use regularly. It's a kind of a ground beef replacement, and I'm going to use mushrooms, walnuts, and lentils. I often do variations of this where I'll swap out the walnuts for, crumbled tempeh. Um, Really, I'll use these kind of, well, walnuts and tempeh kind of interchangeably. But the idea is that I'm going to create this like meaty, protein rich, kind of umami dish with like a kind of a ground beef texture. And so some people will use this as a direct swap for ground beef in their recipes that they already use and love. Some others will do like a 50-50. So you'll use, half ground beef, half of these guys. I mean, I'm biased, but I think this tastes amazing on its own. And again, I feed it to like biggest carnivores and they can't tell the difference and or they love it. So use this recipe in particular for any ground beef recipes that you have or any recipes that use ground beef. You can use this as a substitution. And I'm going to use it today in a enchilada. In addition to that, I'm also going to show you how to make my most favorite bechamel sauce that I'm going to use as the cheese for the top of the enchiladas. And I use it regularly in my practice, and it's super yummy, super creamy, very versatile, and very high in protein. Okay, so I'm just heating up my pan here to about a medium heat. And then we're going to add some olive oil. You can use whatever cooking oil you happen to have on hand. And I'm going to provide you with this recipe and the bechamel recipe. Um, the enchilada recipe you'll see is just the easiest that I won't even supply you with that because you'll get it. I've made an enchilada sauce here. You can buy enchilada sauces, but essentially this is just tomato puree with a bunch of spices, whatever you like to put in it. I've got chili, I've got cumin, I've got coriander, got a little bit of garlic in there, and I just let it simmer. But you can buy this already made too. You don't have to make it, but we'll be using that in addition to the filling, in addition to some tortilla wraps and the bechamel sauce, and then some yummy toppings that you would put on enchiladas, which I'm sure. Okay, so that should be nice and heated. I'm going to add some brown cremini mushrooms. Get that going. And then while that's going, I'm just going to show you the walnuts that I'm using. They are chopped. And I like this size just because, again, the mouthfeel is simulating ground beef. And then we're adding a really good source of healthy fat. It's a good source of protein, of course. The fat in particular is omega-3 fatty acids, which is a functional food, particularly great part of an anti-cancer diet, an anti-inflammatory diet, to be honest, in general. Um, Walnuts are amazing and highly underutilized, I think. Yeah, and they're also very fatty too, which, as we know, ground beef generally has a very fatty mouthfeel and texture. So we need that extra fat. And then with the lentils, these are already cooked lentils. So you could obviously cook these from dry, or you're welcome to just use a can of lentils. I usually go for low sodium, and then I rinse them really, really well. And then in terms of the spices that we'll be using, again, this will be in the recipe that you'll receive. I'm using some cumin, some coriander, garlic, black pepper, and a little bit of smoked paprika. Now, these spices I find are like the best to create that nice umami flavor that we're looking for to replace ground beef. I oftentimes do, and I didn't have it today, but I oftentimes will also add soy sauce. Soy sauce has a nice umami flavor and gives it a little bit of nice saltiness as well. But I'm just going to use salt today. But if you had, say, soy sauce or tamari, that would be good to add to this. And I think the recipe actually that you'll be given does use that. I'm just using what I have on hand today. The recipe too will uses tempeh as well, but I just wanted to show you the application that you can swap out the tempeh for walnuts because sometimes tempeh isn't as easy to find in stores. And sometimes people are a little bit hesitant about tempeh, but you shouldn't be because it is delicious. We're just sauteing the mushrooms out. I really love this recipe too because it can be made ahead of time. So for example, tomorrow it is my sister-in-law's birthday and we're gonna enjoy these enchiladas. So I'm making it ahead of time. You can also make it ahead of time and freeze it. Other good things. Same with if you're just making the ground beef recipe or the meat recipe that I'm making here, you can make this ahead of time and also freeze it and then use it as needed. Great. Now I'm gonna add And I do like to add the walnuts in a little bit earlier on so that they soften. Next up, we're going to add our spices. So don't mind me. I'm just going to do a free for all in terms of the amounts, but you'll be given the specific amounts. Um, but honestly, I always just season with my heart. But you'll be given the actual recipe. So about a teaspoon of cumin and coriander, about a half teaspoon of garlic. You could add fresh garlic in here too. And then about a quarter teaspoon of black pepper. And then we're going to do about a quarter teaspoon of the smoked paprika. I love smoked paprika, but it is a predominant flavor. So you just want to be careful not to use too much of it or just completely taste like smoke. Okay, and now we're toasting out those spices until they're fragrant. Everything in this dish is a great component of an anti-cancer diet, especially the spices. They also too add antioxidants, and then they add flavor with the added salt, fat, salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats. That's nicely toasted. And now I'm going to add the lentils. And the lentils, because they have a little bit of water because they're previously cooked, they deglaze the pan just a little bit. And we really just want to heat the lentils through because they're already cooked. And then now I'm going to add some salt.
Got a question here.
Yay.
Is one type of lentil better to use than another? I personally don't like red lentils because I find them mushy and don't like the mouthfeel.
That's a great question. So for this dish, you would absolutely not use red lentils because they completely dissipate in the dish that you're making. But they're great for soups and adding extra protein to say like a sweet potato soup or a butternut squash soup because they completely just melt and make things nice, creamy, and rich. This would be the best lentil to use is brown lentils for this one. You could also use beluga lentils or black lentils. That would work as well. But I find that the brown lentils work the best for this particular dish. So yes, different lentils have different applications for sure. That's a great one.
Thank you.
So that is done. That's it. That's done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some of the enchilada sauce to this just to get it a little bit more moist before I put it into the tortillas. You can also use this for shepherd's pie, a bolognese, or the moussaka. You could also use it for sloppy joes. There's so many different applications that you could use this with mixed. That's nice and saucy now. Just going to set this aside. This stuff out of the way here, and I'm going to swap out and I'm going to make the bechamel sauce for you. Another super easy recipe. Oh, We have tofu. We have cashews. We have nutritional yeast. We have garlic. Salt as well, and then a little bit of water. You could also use veg stock here too for a little oomph of flavor. If you were using this for a pasta, like a pasta sauce, you could use pasta water, the water that you've used to cook your pasta in, and then that actually helps it to stick to the noodles afterwards. And essentially, all we're doing is putting everything into a blender and blending it up nice and smooth, and that is it. That's it. Super easy. Um, if you don't have cashews or if you have a nut allergy, a white cannellini bean or white kidney bean would work perfectly in lieu of the cashews. I would just add a little bit of extra fat to it, like olive oil, an extra couple tablespoons of that, because as we know, cashews are quite fatty, beans are not, and we want that nice mouthfeel. So I'm using about again, you'll get the measurements for this, but I'm using there's 300 grams of silken tofu, so soft tofu, um, about a cup, 3/4 of a cup to a cup of cashews, not roasted and unsalted. I've got about a cup of nutritional yeast here, adds like a nice nutty, cheesy flavor. Nutritional yeast is also a complete protein. So complete protein, and then a good source of protein. And then we're adding garlic, which is part of that allium vegetable family that I was mentioning before. Garlic's really high in allicin, which is a very powerful antioxidant. Um, and then salt, and then water. So we'll just add all of these things to the blender. And she goes, and then we just blend them up. Easy peasy. And then if you were going to use this in a pasta cookie or in lieu of like a bechamel, all you would do then is just heat it up on the stove in a little saucepan. Just heat it up, and if needed, you can thin it out a little bit with stock or water, depending on the consistency that you prefer. In goes all of these things. And a big old pinch of salt. Great. Okay, now I'm going to um, mix this up. And while I do, maybe Gloria can talk a little bit about some of our programming, including the comedy night that's coming up tomorrow night.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. So, Gilda Stranto, we have our wonderful in-house comedian, Anna Gustafson. So it's about every quarter, 3 times a year, we have the Nevermind comedy show. We recently had one in September. So these comedy shows are totally free to Gilda Stranto members. They have a bunch of really popular international comics, not even just Canadians, but from America and beyond as well. So if you're ever interested in attending any of those, please have a look at our program calendar. Maybe that's my plug today, our programs calendar. We've got a lot of stuff going on all the time. So I'm going to put it in the chat www.gildasclubtoronto.org/programs. And there you can see a total layout of everything that we offer. And everything that we offer is completely free of cost to members of Gilda's Toronto. Membership is also free of cost. We just call you members currently because we're a club, Gilda's Club, so you're a member of Gilda's Club. But that's the plug. Check out our programs link. Most of you who are joining us today are current members, so you know the deal. But maybe if you've registered and you're not a member, you're curious, or you're a healthcare worker, that's the place to go to see what we're up to, and we're always up to something. So definitely check that out. We also have bi-monthly, twice a month, education sessions that are going on. A variety of topics. Sometimes it's about symptom management. Sometimes it's the nitty-gritty about the actual science behind cancer. We've had ones about medical cannabis and psilocybin use. It's a mixed bag. We've got something for everyone. So check out the program's calendar. That's the best place for everything.
Yay! Thank you so much, Gloria. That's great. So many wonderful things. I always say, like when I talk about Gilda's, obviously I'm the nutrition program coordinator, but there are so many other wonderful programs out there. I always talk about it's like anything from like Tai Chi to yoga to all the stuff that you were just mentioning. We've got it all, which is so great, and it's all free. Okay, cool. So I've blended up the ingredients that I put in there, and you can see how creamy that is. I wish you guys could try this. So you just have to try it at home. But nice and creamy. You can see I've got a good little setup here with my cheese sauce, my enchilada sauce, and I've got my meat filling here. And now so I have my got whole grain or whole wheat tortillas here. You can use whatever you like, whatever you happen to have on hand. I find the flour ones are a little bit more forgiving. Sometimes the corn ones can be a bit dry. That's not to say you shouldn't use the corn ones. Traditionally, it is the corn ones that you use. But these work great. And I always like to sneak in a whole grain. Because once you put all this yummy stuff on it, people don't even realize that there's a whole grain in there. Okay, so this is very, very easy and very straightforward. Essentially, what we're going to do here is take a wrap, and then we're just going to stuff it. Now, I always overstuff, so the key is not to overstuff, not to get too excited. Do that. You could put a little bit of cheese or something in there, you put more sauce, whatever you want, other toppings and things. I'm just going to leave it very plain because I do have a ton of toppings that I will put on. And then in terms of rolling, you just fold these guys little sides over and then you roll it. Right? So great. Okay. And then you just repeat until all the filling is done. We've got a high protein, high fiber, high nutrients recipe that doesn't take too much time in terms of prep. You could obviously, the recipe you'll see will be for more servings, but you can definitely cut it in half if it's just, you're making it for 2 or 3 people. I generally think about 2 of these or maybe even one of these, depending on how hungry you are, is good enough for one serving. Or if you're serving it with a salad, definitely one would be sufficient. Okay, any other questions? Ask me anything. Obviously, nutrition related is great, but if you have any questions about storage of things like spices or herbs,
We've got a
anytime.
little comment slash question here. They say, I was completely plant-based prior to chemo, but now I find I'm massively craving comfort food, red meat, legumes, etc. at time will sound or taste awful to me. I still have another year of maintenance
Aw,
to get through. How do I get around this?
okay. That's a great question. Yeah, and honestly, comfort food is something that you do wanna eat, right? Like it's a stressful time. Comfort food is what gets me through stressful times anyways. I would suggest try recipes like this. Definitely try this one. See if it kind of hits the spot. And if it doesn't, you can always do the 50-50, like the half, ground beef and half lentils. If it's legumes in particular that are not doing it for you, um, try them in other applications. So for example, the cream sauce I've got here, throwing cannellini beans in there that you wouldn't necessarily even know they were in there. Using things like silken tofu. Try other things. You don't have to use legumes. They are great and they are versatile. As I was mentioning, you can throw red lentils into soup and not even know that they're there. Um, just yeah, try a variety of different things. But of course, with this one, for example, one of my friends can't eat legumes. He's allergic to it. So when I made this for him, I just used I used mushrooms. Um, I used mushrooms and walnuts essentially was the base of it for him. So yeah, just try different things out. You know yourself best. You know what you like. You know what you don't like. And yeah, just do your best. There's so many different suggestions out there, and honestly, so many different recipes too. So if you're looking for a recipe that's more plant-based that doesn't contain legumes, there are websites aplenty out there to check out. I'm also going to share after this. I mentioned I'm going to share these two recipes, but I'm also going to share with you a massive, massive resource that I use for HSI Canada, and it's got over 200 plant-based recipes. So I'm sure there's one or two on there that will do the trick. But yeah, just be kind to yourself. Obviously, like, sometimes you just have to eat those comfort foods. Do it. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you.
Of course. I think I can get one more. Oh, I wish you could smell all the smells. So great. Yeah, I would be very curious to see if you tried this dish, what you would think of it in terms of the lentils. But again, you can take out the lentils and just use mushrooms and walnuts. Okay, ta-da! Okay, so now we're gonna add some sauce, some of the enchilada sauce. Bring that over. And I'm gonna sneak some around the edges here. You could even do a layer on the bottom. The idea is that we absolutely do not want this to be dry. We want it to be nice and moist so that when it bakes into the tortilla wraps. Okay, let's see. Nice and soft, right? Nice and sassy. Now I'm going to bring in all of the garnishes. Okay, so now I will pour on our cream sauce. I won't need all of this, so we can save this for a rainy day. This lasts in the fridge for a day or so. If you put the garlic in, I would use it up within a day or two. You can also freeze this and use it at a later time.
Just for my brain, does garlic not store as well for longer or it messes with it?
So, great question. Garlic, especially when you're combining it with oil, and this is we're talking about raw, fresh garlic, when you're combining it with oil, uh, after a few days, bacteria can grow. And so it's generally recommended that it be used up within 1 or 2 days. By the third day or the fourth day, then you kind of toss it because it can lead to botulism, which can be very problematic, obviously, make you very, very, very sick. If you know that you're going to store it for more than 1 or 2 days, you could leave the fresh garlic out. You could use a garlic powder, um, and then it will stay for, 6 or 7 days in the fridge. But you can also just freeze it, and that's fine too. Yeah. Okay, you can see it's super saucy. It's just like an enchilada. At this point, I would then add your choice of cheese. This is a plant-based cheese. It's cashew-based, but use whatever you like. Okay. Yeah, 155. Okay, so at this point, we would bake this in the oven for about 45 minutes at 375. and then all that sauces and the cheese, everything would melt and mix together. And then after that, we would top with our favorite toppings. So for the sake of time, I won't put this in, but just imagine that it's all delicious and melty and wonderful. I'll actually do it and then I'll send a photo and maybe Gloria can share it with you or share it with you afterwards. But let's pretend it's all nice and, delicious and melted together. And then you would just add your favorite toppings. So I've got some pickled red onion here. This is one of the easiest ways to add a high um, polyphenol rich food into your diet and it tastes delicious. I literally just sliced red onion, put it into vinegar with a little bit of salt and maple syrup, shook it together, tossed it in the fridge, and then it takes out the pungency of the red onion and adds like a really nice acid that helps to cut some of the creaminess of this enchilada. And then, of course, my absolute fave, jalapenos, adds a nice, obviously, oomph of flavor. And then it also is a vegetable, right? That's a nice little oomph of flavor. And then I've just got some diced tomato and then a little bit of fresh cilantro. You could use basil. You can use whatever you want, salsa, whatever, hot sauce, whatever you like with your enchiladas, do that. Doesn't that look beautiful? Okay, cool. So let's pretend it's all baked, and then we just add. You know what? You can also bake the jalapenos with it too. I've done that before, and it's worked out really well. Or you can leave the jalapenos if you're not into spice. That's allowed too. I like them. Okay, and then a little bit of diced tomato. Add some small pepper, so like onions. You could also add pepper if you wanted to. Some diced pepper would be so nice. These onions last forever too, and it's the easiest way to do like a quick pickle and like add such an to sandwiches and salads. I really, really love it. Highly, highly recommend. Who's gonna make this at home? I hope you do. And obviously you're in charge of the spice, right? Like if you're not into spicy or if spicy is not good if you have mouth sores or that sort of thing, you can definitely just leave the jalapenos out. Don't add chili powder to your enchilada sauce or find one that's just a tomato sauce even. Um, Whatever works for you at your particular time of life. And of course, we gotta add some cilantro. Of course, if you're not into cilantro, add, a basil or, chives would be nice too. What works for you. Ta-da! And there you have it. An easy plant-based enchilada using my ground beef recipe and my bechamel, which are great, great plant-based substitutions for the animal alternatives. So yeah, so there you have it. I will see if there's any other questions. I don't think there are, but that is it. So you'll be getting the recipes and the PowerPoint presentation, and then you also have a recording of this as well. But yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us this afternoon. And yeah, just taking time for yourself and learning a little bit more about chronic disease prevention and management, specifically cancer nutrition. And now you know all of the plant-based myths that are out there, and you can take that information and share it with the masses that we don't have to be afraid of including more plants in our diet. And in fact, we should be. So,
Thank
thanks so much. Thanks,
you.
Gloria.
Thank you. Have a good day,
See you
everyone.
next time.